But then it did the most YA thing it could have ever done, and suddenly there's a happy festival. Hello everyone, my name is Holly and welcome to the first reading wrap-up of the year. My January wrap-up 2022 is happening. It is upon us already a little too quickly. Honestly, I feel like I've just been in a time warp between reading and playing my PS5. February is probably going to be the same since it's a huge month for video game releases like Dying Light 2, Elden Ring, Horizon Forbidden West, which unpopular opinion maybe, but I'm far more excited for, but that's literally what I'll be switching between. To be honest, I came out of 2021 in a really weird reading funk. I wouldn't even call it a slump. My brain had just stopped. It ceased to exist. The best way I can describe it as is like standing on the platform of a subway and trains are just like whooshing past you 200 miles per hour, but the trains were life. Thankfully, I implemented a new reading method into my life, which I'll link above on the screen for you and down below, and it helped me so much. Once I picked up my first book in January, you literally couldn't stop me from reading, and I'm so excited to share with you what those books were. But before we move forward, can we all give a thank you to Ana Luisa for supporting and sponsoring today's video. If you are looking for some beautiful and dainty jewelry, Ana Luisa is the perfect website to shop. They are a wonderful jewelry company who creates sustainable jewelry with the earth in mind. They use recycled gold and silver to create their pieces, which I think is so cool and smart, especially here in 2022. We need stuff like this, from the perfect gold earrings to personalized necklaces, which you can stack together. There's gemstones, pearls, no matter what you're looking for, they have you covered. I am myself always wearing Ana Luisa jewelry like I am today. They sent over some new pieces. It's a really pretty set that I think go so well together. The first is this necklace called Aina. I adore this necklace. I'm not a big fan of like chunky jewelry in general, so this is like just subtle enough for everyday wear, yet it is perfect enough when dressed up or layered. I never dress up, but it looks so good worn with like a v-neck or a tank top with a nice jacket on. It has a very polished finish to it and is very well made. And then I have a bracelet here called Carly, which is a gold chain with small gemstones wrapped around the whole thing. Definitely more of a basic style, which can be a nice change after some of the bulkier bracelets that I have. It's very classic looking and lightweight. It's not going to get in the way, that's for sure, especially for someone like me who's like all over the place. And lastly, this ring called Mecca Off-White, which I have received so many comments on. It's a gold ring inlaid with a glossy white band. It kind of reminds me of like French manicured nails with like the white tips on them, but it's such good quality for the price. It's also adjustable so you don't have to worry about your ring size. I absolutely recommend checking out Ana Luisa. They are currently running a very large Valentine's Day sale, so click the link down below. Get yourself something nice or maybe a gift for a friend, your partner, or family member. And thank you again, Ana Luisa, for sponsoring today's video. Okay, so the very first novel I was able to complete for the year, and the novel that really pulled me back into reading, was The Justice of Kings. So this actually isn't released yet to the public, but it will be later this month. It's the first book in a brand new adult fantasy called The Empire of the Wolf, and I loved it so freaking much. And I am not afraid to admit that this style of fantasy story is just one that always like lives inside my soul. It was full of mystery and heart. The writing style was so velvety smooth and detailed. Not too much that it outweighed the story, but enough to where it really did take me out of reality and I could picture every muddy street and tavern. It had such an incredible sense of place, if that makes sense. It gave me the biggest like Witcher vibes. In fact, in my more in-depth review video, I pitched it as The Witcher, but instead of Geralt, it's following Wax, Wayne, and Marcy from Brandon Sanderson's books. That's one hell of a comparison, I know. know. So here we see the story through the eyes of Helena, who is the clerk to Von Vault, and he is the Emperor's justice. They travel together serving justice across the country, whether that be petty crimes or maybe a murder, which is actually the case here when they have to solve one, but it leads into a much bigger problem. Like societal changes that involve what it means to be a justice. The complexity between these characters is absolutely insane. They are totally different people from when you first meet them to when the book ends. If you crave character development, this is exactly where you will find it. There was so much care in writing how each person evolved throughout the book, whether that be better or for worse. I just loved the infusion of darkness and hope. Even the magic system is really interesting. Each justice have special abilities, so Von Vault can pull the truth from someone, but the circumstances have to be like just right, and he can also perform necromancy, which also comes with all sorts of consequences. There's even another justice you meet who can spirit into animals and use them to spy. This is such a fantastic book. Incredibly atmospheric and so transportive. Helena as a main character is so easy to root for. She definitely has like some form of anxiety, and she's just this young woman trying to grab life and her destiny for herself. There was so much mystery, battle scenes, and almost horror aspect later on. It's just paced so incredibly well. I enjoyed it from beginning to end, and I ended up giving this one a no surprise 5 out of 5 stars. And from there, I picked up another very hyped February release, and that was Age of Ash. This is a new adult fantasy written by one of the co-authors who wrote the Expanse series, and I was really excited to hear that. The story here begins with a very sombering prologue of a funeral procession for the prince, and the rest of the story is like a flashback and a build up to that moment. I do want to mention I did not read the synopsis before jumping into this, and I am so glad that I didn't, because I personally think it mentions something that really caught me off guard toward the beginning and made me love the direction the author took even more, so be aware of that. You might not get like that little twist in the gut and shock factor that I really enjoyed, so I guess I recommend going into it blind. I know that's scary, but this is why I typically avoid reading the synopsis. Yep, in the second paragraph it mentions it, but I will give you my very vague one. It follows a few primary characters, but the most notable one is Elise, who is a young street thief. She has so much complexity I really enjoyed. She goes through such hardships, but something horrible happens to her, and it flings her into a world she never thought she could ever reach. This story is definitely a more drawn out plot in my opinion, but I think it to its benefit. It's one of those stories that you really reflect on after finishing it, and you want to tell other people about it. It all felt like a moment in time, and then it was just gone. I mentioned this in my official review, but I think what people might not enjoy is the amount of perspectives, but most of them are just like brief characters who are just interacting with the main ones. I'm pretty sure I said that there's 8 different point of views by page 100, and I've actually heard that his previous fantasy series, The Dagger and the Coin, is similar in the way like the perspectives are structured, so keep that in mind. All in all, I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I seriously go back and forth between 3 and 4 because I did love the story, but there were just like some little things that just held it back for me a little, like the 2 female characters who are friends were incredibly similar personality wise, and the writing was a little too much at times, and most of the story takes place in such a small area. We are pretty much just exploring the slums, but fingers crossed that book 2 expands the world and the city even. Okay, so this is around the time my troubles began. I did not read for 2 days straight, as you can see on my chart, which is fine, whatever, like give yourself some grace, I know, but there was a reason. I wasn't loving the Jasmine Throne, which I had picked up and I had heard so many amazing things about. I read it for 2 days, actually got pretty far into it. I got to page 236, like that's pretty far. But actually on this day, before the X's started, it was a huge struggle getting those pages in. I did it, but it wasn't like super fun. So there was my answer. I just couldn't get super into it for some reason. I like the two main characters, but I had zero interest for any of the side characters. I'll probably talk about this one again in a later wrap up. I can't decide if I should just DNF it or kind of let it simmer for a while and see if I become interested again. I don't want to DNF it because there's still potential here for me, and the cover for book 2 is really drawing me in. I don't know, maybe this is where like my mood reading comes in, because even though I gravitate toward fantasy the most, I think I needed a little bit more of a chill one. The last 3 books combined, like all 3 of these right here, had like a million perspectives combined, so I decided to set down the Jasmine Throne and pick up a different book, which was Vespertine, and unfortunately not the best decision either, but I guess it kind of helped a little. So I definitely broke my own rule already on DNFing a book I'm not enjoying because I got stubborn thinking it'll get better, it's just a hiccup, when in fact it wasn't. So I also read An Enchantment of Ravens by this author, and I also really didn't like that one. It was just 2 people bickering in the woods the whole time, and she didn't really stray too far from that here. The premise of the book, the idea, so freaking cool. We follow a socially awkward nun sharing her body with a murderous spirit. And I really thought the incorporation of like religious hierarchy was interesting. I loved the nuns tending the corpses, the cathedrals, the catacombs, the saints and relics. Like, it fulfilled my inner goth, but then the book just took a huge dip. There was so much agency and importance at the beginning. War between the living and the undead are happening. Villages are being wiped out. It's mayhem. It felt like humanity was at stake. But then it did the most YA thing it could have ever done, and suddenly there's a happy festival. And no one seems to care anymore that demons and spirits are killing their loved ones in the next town over. And hordes of them can literally take over at any moment. Like, that's such a YA thing to do. Oh my gosh, also the amount of times the main character falls unconscious only to wake up in a new location was something. Every single time it happened, I was like, oh, there she goes again. It like became a meme in my head. I should have DNF'd it. I forced myself to read it to the end because of the atmosphere. It's a very like A Plague's Tale, the video game kind of environment. Loved that part, but it took the same YA tropes route, crashed and burned. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars, and it's unfortunate because I love the covers this author is blessed with, but I tend to slog through them. And finally, we have a doozy of a novel, and that is A Veil of Spears, the 3rd book in the Song of Shattered Sand series, which I am making my way through and absolutely loving every second of. I am definitely kicking myself for waiting many months to continue my journey through the series. So at the end of January, I decided that this was going to be the final book I wanted to read for the month, and I really wanted to finish it before February 1st. I'm naturally a very slow reader, so I knew that wasn't possible, so I physically read the first half of the book, and then I listened to the audiobook for the second half. It's 600 pages, and I'm so glad that I did that. I finished it on time. The audiobook was fantastic. I'm already familiar with the world and characters, so the audiobook was easy breezy for me and just all around entertaining. Also really great to hear all of the names I was pronouncing wrong the whole time. If you're not familiar with this series, it's a desert fantasy set within a kingdom ruled by 12 kings. The first book is literally called The 12 Kings of Sharakai, but that book barely even scratches the story in this. Holy cow, it's so much more complex in a very good way. Clearly, I can't talk about much here, but so freaking good. This one really explores the outside of the kingdom and focuses on the tribes that live like out in the desert, and we get to see their side of this whole conflict. It introduced so many new creatures, including desert dragons, which I was not expecting. The magic was even expanded upon even more. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I did find the beginning just a little bit slow, and that could be because I had waited way too long to finally read it. But man, the second half was like a bomb explosion. Okay, so those are all the books that I read or tried to read in January. All in all, I think a really successful first month of reading. I read 2 arcs. One of them is a new favorite. I continued on with a series, and I tried 2 other books that I can unhaul and pass along to someone else. We'll see about the Jasmine Throne. I'll keep you updated. So I guess I made room on my shelves if you want to look at it more positively. I really hope you enjoyed this wrap up. If you did, give this video a big thumbs up because it helps me out a lot. Don't forget to subscribe. I'd love to have you here, and also be sure to check out Ana Luisa for beautiful, sustainable jewelry, especially since Valentine's Day is here and they are having a very large sale. So until we meet again, happy reading.